Hello, this is Jacqueline Eckern with Eating Disorder Hope, and today I am honored to interview Sarah Summers. She is the author of Saving Sara, and this is a memoir about food addiction. And with that, I'd like to introduce Sara.
Hi, Jacqueline. Thank you so much for inviting me to talk with you. Very honored.
Oh, we're really pleased, and I'd love to just dive in. So can you tell us about your background and why you wrote the book about food addiction?
Well, my background as far as eating disorders go is that I've been doing research on it since I was born. I really don't think I ever had a normal relationship with a bite of food. Yeah. And my sister also is a binger, and just shows that just being born in the same family doesn't tell you anything. She was a normal child and she started at 13. So, but we both got the disease, and I went into psychotherapy as a profession, and I've retired from that and moved to Paris, France. And this is kind of a joke, but I think everybody, when they come to France, takes a course in writing if they've ever had the interest or if they love books. So of course I did, and I took a couple of courses, and the only thing I really knew to write about was my childhood and my battles with food and battles with my weight and battles with my dieting. And then I took a longer week course called the Paris Writers Workshop, and they had invited some agents to come meet us. And an agent had read the 15 pages one has to send in order to apply to get into the workshop. And she asked me if I could write a book. This was July of 2016. And I said, sure, not really knowing what I was talking about because I had no idea what it involved. And I wrote something, I finished it. I wrote her and said, shall I send it to you? And she said, no, you need to talk to an editor. Here are 3 people, but I recommend that you get this person. And as it turned out, this person was excellent, and it showed me that I knew very little about the craft of writing, that I was a good storyteller. But as far as learning how to write dialogue or setting a scene or making people want to turn pages to the next page. So she worked with me a good 1.5 years, almost every other week. And I'm a good student. I learned, I did want to give up a couple of times, and somewhere in that 1.5 years, when I wanted to give up, I started asking myself, why am I doing this? And I just thought, if I'm not doing this for a good reason, why it's hard. This is hard work. Yeah. And I thought about the fact that I have come into recovery. I've got long-term abstinence from eating sugar, grains, and starch, and that our primary purpose in the 12-step programs is to help another compulsive eater and to share our story. And it says that in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, that our most important asset is our story. So I thought, I guess this is why I'm writing it. So next time you hit a bump, Sara, you know you have a reason now. And so that's what happened. I asked her to be a little bit more assertive with me, that I needed more direction, but I finished it in December of 2018, and she asked me if I wanted to publish it, and she pointed me towards She Writes Press, which just publishes women. And then I had the year of learning what one does after you finish the book and before it comes out. And so it came out in the United States on May 12th. It's come out over here in Europe, May 28th. But I am very happy. I've been getting very good reviews. I thought maybe it was because all my friends bought it, but I've been told that, I've been told that it is appealing, that people are learning something. So I think it will probably be my last book, but I am really glad I finished it and that it is out there. And what I wanted to give was a story that people who are suffering could identify with. I think it's the most important thing. Nobody's going to ask for help from someone unless they think they know where they've been. And my story is pretty low bottom. I'm sure they're worse. But in fact, it's just a story. It's one of thousands of stories. But if I've been given the gift of expressing it and people identify and say, if she can do it, maybe I can do it too, and walk themselves over to, in my case, it was Gray Sheeters Anonymous, but there are other things that work. What a gift that would be back to me if a lot of people suffering stop suffering. So that was the very long version, Jacqueline, of why I wrote this book.
No, that's fascinating and a great summary, really. And what you went through to become an excellent writer and make it engaging and share your story, I think is really inspiring to a lot of people, that turning lemons into lemonade. Can you tell us a little bit about how your disordered eating controlled your life and how it's different now without that dominating, that compulsion dominating you?
Well, the compulsion that was dominating me grew, you know, as I got older. And at first it was just I wanted to lose weight and look like my friends. And as that got harder, I started adding things. I wanted to lose weight, and I wanted to look pretty. And then I wanted to lose weight. I wanted to get better grades. I wanted to have friends like me. And it just grew and grew to the point where 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I couldn't go anywhere without thinking about it. If I walked down a street, I'd see my reflection in a window and I just shake. I just hated that person. And if I passed food, I would play ping pong in my head. Am I going to buy it? Am I not going to buy it? Well, you made a promise to yourself this morning, but maybe I'll start again tomorrow morning. So it's a constant dialogue. I pass somebody who's really pretty and I start beating myself up. People don't need to shame me. I can do a very good job of it myself. And that's what I do with that voice. Just tells me what a piece of I am and I can't be successful. And sometimes it wasn't as clear as the words I'm using right now with you, but it was constant and it felt like a ping pong game, chatter in my head all the time. I remember one of the things, I don't think I wrote about this in the book, but one of the things in the 1980s I did to try and learn more about myself was take some very serious Vipassana meditation courses. And one day when I was in my meditation, I actually saw a round table in my head and people jumping up and screaming at each other. And then later on in the meditation, everybody sat down and was quiet. And that's the way it feels today. Everybody up there is quiet. Maybe they're still there, just waiting for me, you know, to do something stupid. But that those voices, all the things I was thinking about, the stuff that kept me from having a life has gone away. And I've did this late in life, but early enough that I get to move to Paris. I get to write a book. I get to do a lot of things that, in fact, a lot of people haven't done. And it's all because in my case, I went to Gray Sheeters Anonymous and they were very clear with me. Do not eat sugar, grains, or starches if you want that to stop. And I'm also addicted to more. I'm a binger, I'm not a bulimic, and I'm not anorexic. So I have to put everything on a scale because, as we lovingly say, my eyes are quite broken. I don't know what a real meal is. So it's just remarkable. I've heard this said, but I didn't understand it. And I understand it now, but if I had planned out what I'd want my life to look like when I first got abstinent, I would have shortchanged myself because this is really kind of unbelievable. I mean, who moves to Paris in their 60s?
That's awesome. I love it. And I think people will be so encouraged by your story and that there is hope. What would you say to someone who's watching this now that is really mired in food addiction and has tried and tried to get it under control and failed? How can they have hope that they too might enjoy success as you have with abstinence?
Well, I would say to them, try it. Come to a 12-step program, get yourself a sponsor, try it for 7 days or whatever amount of days. You can always leave, but you'll never find out what you will get if you don't try it. And I have actually said that to people, and they end up staying. But I don't think it's crossed people's minds that they can try something and they can always leave if they don't like it and go try something else. The thing that's, to me, that's unique about 12-step programs is that it's threefold. It treats the physical, and it treats the emotional and the mental, and it treats the spiritual. And we all believe we have a big hole in our soul. And in my case, I was filling it up with food, and it never worked. The hole never got filled. And so I'm very biased, I say that right off the bat, towards the 12-step programs because it covers so much. And even though I went to therapy and enjoyed it, this does so much more. And it has layers upon layers. And if a person is really curious about themselves, there's no end to what you can learn about yourself, to the point where you just realize you're an imperfect being who makes mistakes, and you don't have to abuse yourself because you're imperfect and you make mistakes. Where are you going to learn that? In 12-step programs.
Yeah, that unconditional acceptance and love of yourself is so hard to come by. And I don't think we've ever had anyone reach out to Eating Disorder Hope that didn't struggle with giving themselves that allowance to be human. What is also interesting is with you having been a psychotherapist,
Yes.
done your own therapy work, and also being deeply involved in the 12-step program. Can you talk a little bit about how those two things can complement each other in someone's, not only their recovery, but just their evolution spiritually and emotionally as a person?
I can, but I want to preface it by saying that I really want the star of the book to be the disorder and then the recovery. I want to just be one of many people with a story. So I am a little reticent to bring too much spotlight on me, because this just happens to be facts about me. And next door, sitting next to me, because somebody who is completely different, maybe had no education at all, works in a grocery store line, and yet they feel the exact same things I do. They could say the same words I do, and we could be best friends. And it's remarkable to me. So I was fortunate that I did end up in a profession that I really loved, and really, I was very honored. I kind of say I fell into it, but it's the only profession I did. And my generation jumped around a bit. But I shouldn't say but. They tell us in the 12-step programs that self-knowledge will avail you nothing. And that's what I learned. I could learn all the different styles of therapy, I could read the books, and I did. And it wasn't going to help me until I could make that surrender that I actually had a disease. It made me a better therapist. I was much more accepting of people. I was much more compassionate. And I was trained to tell people they could have a lot more control over their lives. And I stopped that because I feel strongly now, if you're lucky, you have a partnership with a higher power, and together you can do that work. But trying to control your life, which is what I did for a long time, brought me a lot of misery because it was a setup. There are things I can control, and those are the things I look at. You know, as the pandemic hit, as the flu, the virus was going around, I was so well prepared because of these programs to take control over what I was going to have in the house, what I could do. I bought myself a Zoom account. I did all this before they put us into lockdown, because those are the things I could control. But I couldn't control how long this was going to go on. I had no idea how I was going to react to it. Fortunately, I'm fine. I've had a fine reaction to it. And I've learned to distinguish those things. You know, serenity prayer helps if you say it enough times.
Yeah, absolutely. That idea of being powerless over people, places, and things is so freeing. And I think in almost all addictive behaviors, there's that correlating control. And it does seem that the 12-step programs and philosophy really create the space for people to let go of that control that so many of us fight with,
Yeah.
that does cause such misery. Have you noticed, I don't know if you did struggle in-depthly with depression, sounds like maybe some anxiety. Have you noticed that that lifted and improved just physically for you, for whatever physical elements were going on with abstinence, or did you still need to address that separately?
The depression lifted, and I was depressed most of my life to the point I was taking antidepressants, and it lifted almost immediately, which makes me wonder if it was sugar fueled. I mean, I really thought I was going to be depressed for the rest of my life, and it was something I was going to have to accept. I have down days, but they don't. My worst down day is nothing like those days that I couldn't get out of bed. Anxiety is something different. I did suffer and do suffer from anxiety, not very much anymore, but it's almost always fear related. And so when I feel it, if I'm willing to sit down immediately and kind of inventory myself, I am really afraid of something happening. And I'll usually talk to a friend. I have learned not to diagnose myself. I'm very bad at it. And so I'll call a friend and we'll talk it through. And I'm a person whose anxiety doesn't always show up in the daytime, but will show up when I'm trying to go to sleep. And I hate that. I love to sleep, and I hate lying there not being able to sleep. So it's really worth it to me to find out what's the problem underneath it all quickly.
And how have your relationships changed or been enhanced in your 12-step work through Gray Sheet, and also just your abstinence period of time that you've enjoyed? How have you seen your relationships evolve?
That's a good question. Some of them just went by the way if they couldn't support it. And it takes a good friend, I think, to support the Gray Sheet program, because I take a scale with me, go out to dinner with a scale, and it turns out people don't really notice what I'm doing, but a friend can be afraid that somebody will notice. I think that having done the 12 steps a number of times and realizing that I'm not a mistake, that was my big one, but that I make mistakes and it's okay, and that I can say I'm sorry, and I can say what I'm not going to do from now on. And that's huge, because my experience is people can be very forgiving, but if you don't admit it or deny it, they can get very angry. And so I've really learned not to be. I'm afraid to tell people if I think they're really angry at me, but I'm not afraid. I always do it, and sometimes I need more time to prepare for it than others. I listen a lot more. I'm very opinionated, and never occurred to me, this is a joke, it never occurred to me people didn't want to know my opinions. So I would express them. So now I listen a lot more. Um, and the other thing that's a big thing was I wanted to be the center of attention. So that when I had a party or a birthday party or something, I wanted to invite a lot of people and have everybody ooh and ah over me. And it turns out that I couldn't be connected to that person who wanted to be the center of attention. That when I celebrate anniversaries and program or my regular birthday, I like being with one or two people. And it's intimate, and I'm right present with them all the time. And boy, that's one of them I wish I'd known early on. I mean, it's such a surprise because we Americans just, we have TV showing us people dancing all over the place. And for me, it didn't work. And so I would end up dissatisfied, and the big hole in the soul would say, feed me. And I would. So I also treasure the few really close friends I have, really treasure them. And I'm careful. Other people are as sensitive as I am. I really have figured that one out. And there's no reason for me to do something that I wouldn't want somebody to do to me. So I'm careful with those friendships. I have a lot of acquaintances. Everybody in Gray Sheeters Anonymous knows me because I do a lot of service. And I really pray to be considerate and polite. That's not anything I would have even thought of when I was eating. I just wanted what I wanted when I wanted it. And I did not think about you, period. So my relationships have improved. And the good ones are really good because I don't try and make everybody my best friend.
So that people pleasing, got to have your approval, has dissipated for you in recovery.
A lot so. As soon as you said people pleasing, I'm thinking, well, it hasn't quite gone away. I am hardwired to abuse myself and to do things wrong. So I have to, especially if I'm tired, I have to really keep a check on myself because I am a people pleaser. But I have the choice not to act on it today. And I know I have that choice. So that if I do something, it falls back on me. I'm the one responsible for what I do and don't do. And I know that.
Well, this is a wonderful book. Where can folks find your book?
Well, I like to plug a website called bookstore.org. Okay. And it supports independent booksellers. And right now, if you go on, it's either bookstore or bookshop. .org, but you go on, you order the book, they figure out where your closest independent bookstore is and set it up, and you can pick it up curbside. So I like to plug that because I love independent bookstores. They do wonderful things. It is available on Amazon, and it is available by Kindle. If you live in Europe, I have copies I can send, and I'm willing to autograph them. I think you can walk into a store and probably, if it's not there, they'll order it for you. But I have a Facebook page called Saving Sara the Book, which I try to make interactive. I write something and then ask people to respond or ask questions. And that one has a button. I'm not quite sure how I managed that, but it does have a button that takes you to Amazon. And I also have a blog called saving-sara.org. And I try to make that interactive also. I just pick something like withdrawal and I'll talk about it for a couple of weeks. I think it's something that when people are coming off of sugar and grains and starches, they are really taken by surprise at how severe the withdrawal can be. And they think they've done something wrong. They think they need therapy. And we aren't doing anybody a service if we don't warn them. It can actually feel worse before it gets better. So I talk a lot about withdrawal on my blog.
Well, those are all really helpful resources, and we will have these also posted on the Eating Disorder Hope site with links to these, so you can find the blog and you can find the bookstore .org or bookshop.org. We'll get that fixed or stated on the website. And then we'll also have a feature of the book and a write-up about the book on Eating Disorder Hope too. And then lastly, can you tell folks how they could learn more about Gray Sheet and Gray Sheet Anonymous?
Well, there's two ways. If you have the book in hand, the very back of the book, I give the website, how to get a hold of it, all the places in Europe you can get a hold of it. There's a phone number and an email. But they also have a website called www.graysheet.org. And it's being updated, and it's going to be a beautiful website. But right now, it's still quite navigable, and you can go in and find out what it is, why we consider this an addiction so serious that, that we use Alcoholics Anonymous as our North Star. And there's a lot of stories on there, and you can get contacts all over the world, the emails, you just look up your country. It's a great website if you're willing to spend some time figuring out how to navigate it. And then when the new one gets launched, it won't be so difficult to find it. But it also has a whole list. All meetings now are on Zoom. And there's a list of regular meetings that have gone on Zoom or are regularly Zoom. And then there's a bunch of what we're calling pop-up meetings that have popped up since the pandemic started to help people. And I started a meditation meeting over here in Europe in the morning. So we meet 7 days a week, every morning, and just kind of to help ground people. So that may or may not stick around. If this ever goes away, we'll see what the future holds. Yeah, so I think that those two places should be good enough to go. And I urge people to give it a try. You're not going to lose anything by trying it. You can always leave, but you'll never know if it's something that could really help you. And I wish everybody good luck. It is horrible disease. I wanted to die 90% of my life, and the fact that I never feel that way today, to me it's a miracle. I'm not religious, but I can't explain it, but it's true and it's happened. So there you go.
Thank you for all this inspiration in the wonderful book. Sara Summers, take care.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline.